So phylogenetics is the study of how groups of species are related in an evolutionary context. So an example of a phylogeny, right? We have legless lizards and snakes evolved from different lineages. So down here we have a phylogenetic tree, and it shows the evolutionary history of some reptiles that you're probably familiar with. So we have geckos, snakes, iguanas, big monitor lizards, and glass lizards, which are also called legless lizards. And we see the legless trait appearing twice, right here somewhere along the lineage for snakes, and then also somewhere here along the lineage for glass lizards. And we can tell that the lizards and the snakes are from different evolutionary histories because of morphological characteristics and other genetic. Systematics is how we classify each of these organisms. So if I were to pick up some legless reptile and then determine its evolutionary relationship by classifying it either as a snake or a glass lizard. So in the 18th century, Carolus Linnaeus published the taxonomy system that we use currently. So binomial. So bi means two, nomial means number. So two, number, and then nomenclature means name. So it's a two naming system where each individual gets two names to describe it. For humans, our binomial nomenclature is Homo sapiens. Underline. And so this first name right here is the genus. And the second one is the specific or the species. So sapiens is sapien. So we literally named ourselves wise man. Sapiens means wise, homo is man. And sapiens is more specific. So there are other living organisms, they're not alive anymore, that had the same genus, like Homo erectus, Homo florensis, Homo neanderthalensis, but a different species name is not shared. So each species would have its own species name. Organisms that are in the same genus are going to be more closely related to each other. That's how we classify things based on how close the evolutionary relationships are. Some rules for binomial nomenclature. When you're writing out a genus, the first letter of the genus is always capitalized, and the first letter of the species is always lowercase. If you're going to write something out like hand, like I am right here with my pen, you would underline a genus and species name. If you were typing, you would use italics. So we classify things into groups. From the most specific or narrow is the species group. Many species that are related to each other get grouped into the same genus. Many genus that are related to each other will get grouped into the same family. So some other genus that might be closely related to Panthera would be some other large cats in the Felidae family. Families that are closely related to each other would get grouped in the same order. So carnivora, we might see dogs, wolves, bears, and big cats in there. And then orders that are closely related to each other will get grouped in the same class. Classes that are closely related to each other will get grouped in the same phylum. Phyla that are closely related to each other will get grouped in the same kingdom. And then there are only three domains, the domain Archaea, Bacteria, and Eukarya. So from this, domains are the largest, most broad group. So from biggest to smallest, it goes domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. So this is something you need to know. There's all sorts of mnemonic devices for helping you remember the order of domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, where domain is the largest and then species is the smallest. We use the word taxon or taxa. So taxa is plural, and then taxon is singular, to describe any level. So I can say a domain is a taxa, a kingdom is a taxa, a phylum is a taxa, a class is a taxa. So these are all different levels of the taxonomic group, but they're all taxonomic groups. And so you'll hear me say the word taxa all the time, and it can refer to any grouping. So we often put these individuals on a branching phylogenetic tree. And you can see that individuals that are more closely related to each other are going to be closer to each other on this tree. So in here we've got the species, which is going to have the genus and species name. And the Canis latrans and the Canis lupus are both in the same genus, and they are more closely related to each other. They're not very far apart on this tree. We've got the badger and the otter. These aren't quite as closely related to each other. They're in different genus. We've got Tixidia or Lutra, but they're both in the mustelid family. So they branch a little further back, sharing the same family but different genus. And then up here we've got the panther, and it's not very closely related to any of these, but if you follow it back, they're all in the same order of carnivora. So the further back on the tree you go, the larger the grouping to capture everybody into the classification taxa. So this is going to be kind of the anatomy of a phylogenetic tree. It's important to understand that a phylogenetic tree is a hypothesis. Phylogenetic trees change all the time. Wait till we get to the protists. They're always changing. So as we get new information about genetics, or as we discover new species, we fit them in on the phylogenetic tree, and that shuffles things around. There are some phylogenetic trees that we have lots and lots of data for, and so generally they don't change very much. And then there are some phylogenetic trees like the protists that we are finding new information for every day, and they change a lot. But phylogenetic tree represents an evolutionary relationship. So how recent were these two organisms? How recent did these two organisms share a common ancestor? The more recent the branch point, where they would have kind of diverged from each other, the more closely related they are. So a branch point is a divergence. All of these spots here, where we see it kind of go off in two directions, those are the branch points. And they represent a common ancestor shared between the group going this way, so in this case the fishes, and the group going this way, which would be the tetrapods, because these are all four-legged individuals. So fishes and humans, our most recent branch point, if you follow us all the way back, is way back here. So fish and humans don't really share a recent common ancestor. The common ancestor is much further back. Here's another branch point between chimpanzees and humans. And so the common ancestor between chimps and humans is much closer. So chimps and humans are considered sister taxa because they share a recent common ancestor, an immediate common ancestor. And this ancestor is not shared by any other group. So we would consider these two groups to be sister. And the further back you have to go on this phylogeny to find a common ancestor, the further those groups are from each other. A lot of time we'll use kind of dash marks on the line to represent that at some point after this branching off, before we got to modern day, whatever organism over here, we have frogs, that some ancestor in that lineage maybe had a mutation or developed a new adaptation. And we can show phylogenetic trees in a lot of different ways. So if you look at all 4 of these trees, they're all actually the exact same tree. And we can tell by kind of tracing the sister groups. So in any of these branch points can be rotated, right? It doesn't matter that the chimps are above the humans. I could switch the humans to be above the chimps, and it doesn't actually change the relationship. So if we look at these trees, chimps here are sister to humans. Same thing over here. Chimps and humans are sister groups. It doesn't matter which one's on top or the bottom. The group with humans and chimps, so this group, is sister to the lizard group. All right, so here's the group with humans and chimps right there. Go back. It's sister to the lizard group. So these are the same relationships as over here. They're just arranged in a different way. So you can do this horizontally, or we can have these kind of vertical diagonal trees. So we've got the same relationship here. Chimps and humans are sister together here and here. And then that group of chimps and humans is sister to the lizard groups there and there. So all of these trees show the exact same relationships between humans, chimps, lizards, frogs, and fishes. They're just slightly arranged differently.